Let me say something that will disrupt the way most people pray. God doesn't explain everything before he asks you to move. And the reason that bothers us is because we've been trained to believe clarity comes first and obedience comes second. But in Scripture, it's almost always the other way around. We want God to show us the whole plan, the timeline, the outcome, the risk assessment, the emotional impact, the backup plan in case it doesn't work. God usually says, take one step. And we say, okay, but where does it lead? And heaven is quiet. Not because God is hiding, but because trust is being tested. Let's be honest. If God explained everything up front, most of us wouldn't obey him. We'd negotiate. We'd say, okay, God, I'll do that part, but not that part. I'll obey, just not publicly. I'll obey, just not if it costs me comfort. I'll obey, just not if it makes things awkward. So God doesn't explain everything because explanations create loopholes. Look at Abraham. Hebrews 11:8 says, by faith, Abraham obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Notice what the verse does not say. It doesn't say God showed him a map. It doesn't say God laid out a 5-year plan. It doesn't say Abraham felt ready. It says he went. And let's not romanticize that. Abraham didn't walk out his tent like, wow, this feels amazing. He probably walked out like, so we're really doing this? Faith often feels like confusion with good posture. We think faith is confidence. It's not. Faith is obedience without answers. That's why God doesn't explain everything, because explanation rewards control, but obedience builds trust. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Translation, stop demanding explanations from a God you already trust. Here's where we get stuck. We confuse understanding with safety. We say, once I understand it, then I'll move. But if God waited for you to fully understand him, you'd never grow. Parents don't explain calculus to toddlers before teaching them to walk. They just say, come here. And the child falls and gets back up and learns by moving. Growth doesn't come from explanation. It comes from participation. Let me make this uncomfortably practical. Some of you are asking God, why am I still here? And God is saying, because you won't move until I explain everything. You're waiting on clarity. God is waiting on courage. Joshua didn't get clarity. He got a command. Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. God didn't say, let me explain how this works first. He said, go, I'll be with you. God's presence is the explanation. Here's a hard truth we don't like. If God explained everything, you'd trust the explanation more than you trust him. You'd obey outcomes, not God. And when the outcome changed, your obedience would disappear. That's why God often gives instructions without details. Because obedience that depends on details is not obedience. It's conditional cooperation. James 1:22 says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Notice James didn't say, understand it fully first. He said, do it. We delay obedience because we want predictability. God invites obedience because he wants maturity. Let's talk about the humor no one laughs at, real life. We say, God, I just need peace. But what we mean is, I need certainty. We say, I'm praying about it. But what we mean is, I'm hoping it goes away. We say, I don't feel led. But what we mean is, I feel uncomfortable. And God is like, exactly. Discomfort isn't a sign you missed God. it's often the sign you found him. Because growth always disrupts familiarity. Hebrews 11:1 says, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." If you can see everything, faith is unnecessary. If you can explain everything, trust is optional. God doesn't want optional trust. Here's where this gets personal. There are instructions God gives you that only make sense later. You obey now. You understand later. Peter didn't understand walking on water. He stepped anyway. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Matthew 14:29. The water didn't become solid first. The miracle met movement. Some of you want God to calm the water first. God is waiting for you to step. And yes, you might sink a little. Peter did. But even sinking kept him closer to Jesus than staying in the boat.
Let me say this gently. God not explaining everything is not punishment, it's training. Training you to walk by faith, training you to trust his voice, training you to move without perfect conditions. 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." Not by spreadsheets, not by emotional readiness, not by full understanding, by faith. So here's the question you should sit with today. What has God already told you to do that you keep asking him to explain? Because the delay isn't on his end, the explanation is obedience. This isn't condemnation, it's an invitation. God isn't withholding clarity to frustrate you. He's inviting you to grow. Take the step, make the call, start the habit, end the excuse, move while unsure. That's faith. If this hits you, don't just nod and scroll. Leave a comment, engage with it, because honesty activates growth. And if you're serious about faith that moves, not just faith that feels good, subscribe. Click the next video on your screen. We're going deeper because God isn't silent. He's just waiting to see if you'll move without an explanation.